Oh, this year?
Yeah, outside of the Horrorween stuff. Like, you got your own list going,
yeah.
or?
I mean,
Are we all?
we still need to do
Can
some
you actually hear me?
Halloween.
I can.
I can.
Hey, buddy.
Yep.
Oh, well, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, the Crypt of Horrors, or Dustin, because we always seem to mess that up, other people. So tonight we're here with our regular crew. We got Dave.
Hello.
Kabuki Jake.
Hi.
Septum Sin.
Oh.
And this new guy, Mostly.
Hey, what up, buddy?
Ew, good audio. And so tonight we're talking about the 1996 classic Scream by Wes Craven, which everybody should be familiar with this movie, right? So this is your kind of really early spoiler warning. Like, we're going to talk about the stuff that happens. So if you haven't seen it, well, you were warned. Go watch it. It's surprisingly cheap and readily available.
It's on Netflix. If you don't have it, it is. Yeah, indeed.
I have the Blu-ray set, which was pretty cheap.
I got a really shitty DVD multi-pack, but it did the job.
Hey, I have the Canadian edition.
Yeah, me too.
They had it on the shelf, so I just used hers.
It's like, well, we're gonna go through the plot and all the surprises. So just to be sure you were warned. So anyway, so just a quick overview of what actually happens in this. It's kind of such a simple movie. It's basically just a slasher that's aware of like the slasher and horror movie tropes,
we are not new to, because there was one other movie that kind of dealt with tropes, wasn't there?
I think Scream's unique in the fact that it doesn't play around with a bunch of bullshit, though. Scream hits you fast and hard. So Dustin's, assumption that it was fast and quick is definitely a thing, because there's not a lot of filler in between the shit that happens in Scream.
I was referencing our Behind the Mask episode.
Aha. Well, of course, this one predates that one by a full decade, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So that was 06.
Maybe
96.
Maybe the first true self-aware movie, horror movie.
Yeah, Scream. Apparently, horror was in some kind of rut in that period of the 90s, and Scream. Everybody says Scream pulled horror out of it.
I'd agree.
It sure helped.
I think I'd agree to a point. Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't a horror person at the time, so I can't really comment anything on that because I just don't remember. But.
Hit us with it, bud. What's that plot? We have faith in you. Yeah. Go for it.
A killer that exploits and plays on horror tropes. Yeah. Dang it. I wrote this down. Why do my notes not make sense?
Well, they got a simple one line on IMDb.
It's all once you get to that hot seat, man.
I hate warming up on the mic. But anyway,
take two, clack.
Whoa! What was that? Actually, a sound in the background. What was that there? It's like
sound of us dying a little bit on the inside. You got it, buddy. Come on, you can do this. What's that plot?
Well, I thought I was done. So
no one explained.
So how about per IMDb? A year after the murder of her mother, teenage girl is terrorized by a killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game.
Damn, that was pretty good. See, I can't do everything.
All right.
The first impressions?
Yeah, that's kind of where I got mixed up, because I had the plot like point by point in our note sheet, but
well, I think it's only fair, since you went and did that you should have a chance to run through that shit, boy. Like, you got this. Come on.
Well, whoever I'm trying not to say mean things about them in case they're listening. But
let's move on to first impressions, and we'll get back to the plot when we hit.
Yeah,
That's usually where we start.
Anyway, so first impressions. So when I was getting into horror in 2012, I had heard of Scream, but I'd never seen it before. I think I might have actually seen Scary Movie first. Or at the very least, I saw it very close to when I saw Scream, to the point that they kind of blurred together a little bit in my mind.
I had the same impression.
Which, like, they're pretty much the same movie. Like,
oh, that's blasphemy. That's straight blasphemy.
Well, I'm talking about, like, scene for scene, like, because Scary Movie parodied almost point for point almost everything you see in Scream.
Right.
I feel it.
So that's more so what I meant. Like, as a joke, I keep it on the shelf, next to the Scream box set. But anyway, the first time I saw it, I was like, that was all right, because, I didn't know any of the tropes. I didn't know any of, like, the in-jokes. Like, I didn't get any of it. And I was like, that was okay. And then I didn't really think about it again until I decided to revisit it earlier this year when Ghostface came out as a DLC character for Dead by Daylight.
I remember that.
And then I got a little bit deeper into, like, Wes Craven's, like, history, like, as a filmmaker, and just kind of like what he was like, and I was able to appreciate it a lot more. So Scream was definitely way better the second time I saw it, which took like 5 years or something like that to happen. But I remember being kind of surprised just by how intense, like, the violence was. Because it had been a while since I'd seen anything like that viscerally nasty.
Mm-hmm.
And it really stuck out. And I know we're going to go into that fairly soonish. So why don't we start with who wants to go next for their first impressions and first time watching?
Well, I'll go ahead and launch off. Of course, I'm not even sure about this franchise. I'm not sure if you've even heard of it before today. No, just kidding. But Scream has. I've actually remember seeing Scream not too long, actually probably around the time it came out in theaters, and being pretty impressed with the movie when it came out. I wasn't big into horror back in those days. This was in, the late 90s, I believe.
96.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at the end of high school trying to check out, and I watched it with friends. And I thought it was pretty decent at the time. Oh, let's see here. So, at the same time, I did enjoy most of the tropes that we used. Let me move that around. Okay. Throughout this, I thought that the concept of a self-aware horror movie was intriguing. And when I returned to it later, many years later, when I got it in my collection, I got extra enjoyment out of it. And even to this day, I just the whole series is a guilty pleasure. Especially 2 and 3, even though people don't really like 3, but I really thought it was enjoyable.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, I don't have much trouble with it.
It's just good fun.
All right.
Turns out to be a pretty great series. I kind of wish I'd given it more of a chance, like the first time around.
Right. But I guess I'll go ahead. I honestly cannot remember the first time I saw Scream. I remember its release. I remember that with I think it came out I guess this would have been freshman year. I don't want to say too specifically because it makes me feel old. But I was definitely in high school when it came out. And I remember it was one of those movies that kids saw that, like, my friends knew. And the same thing with the second one. And I cannot remember when I saw the first two. I know I saw them before the third one came out in 2000. I know in part because I know I saw this before. I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I actually went to theaters to see the sequel to that one. So and that was in high school. So it was sometime in that time frame. And I always liked it. I mean, I was not a horror person starting out. You guys know by now that I'm very hit or miss on horror in general. I don't like excessive gore. And this was a film, my understanding, they had to battle the MPAA because of the gore level. I actually am very pleased with the final cut because I was able to enjoy what they came out with. You know, they didn't dwell on things that were less pleasant, I thought. People find the shocking violence less pleasant, but, you know. But it's a good mix of humor and shocking violence. Reasonably well-crafted whodunit plot that changes with each film and pretty well updates with each film. They do a really good job. I like meta and self-referential stuff, and they really have a ball with that throughout the series. So yeah, there's a lot there that I enjoy. I like the gratuitous cameos. I like the various certain little bits here and there, but actually we were having a discussion before we started about Westerns, and I love how Scream 3 starts with a cameo by Kelly Rutherford, who played Dixie Cousins in Briscoe County Jr., one of the great shows that never got a proper showing. Sure. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen each of these. I know I've seen 4 twice, and each other one more than that. But I couldn't even tell you. I've probably seen this film 6 or 7 times. It's one I come back to every now and then.
Okay. I myself, I remember. See, I didn't go and see this in the theater because I spent more time collecting than I did going to the theater. And then I did, and then I would watch them at home because I preferred the home theater experience. But I was a junior in high school, and I kept hearing all about this film from different people, and different people started dressing up as Ghostface. I was like, what the fuck is this? And so when I finally saw it, I saw it on VHS, of course, when it came out. I think I bought it from Blockbuster. And I ended up watching that, but then I kept hearing about the parodies, or the parody a Scary Movie, and the fact that it made fun of the movie because they came out similarly to each other, and I think I blurred thinking I was seeing Scary Movie while I was seeing Scream this time again. Though, my first reaction to this was definitely there was a level of gore. And because it was Wes Craven, he had references to other movies of his and whatnot that later I figured out, So I think that it's a decent slasher film for what it comes out to being, and it makes references to different things in the horror genre that many of us who have nostalgia for the 80s definitely that brings that out in this movie, and it's more of a party movie, I think, so you
can make it that. It doesn't have enough
dare I say a beer and popcorn movie. I think that term needs to become more popular, because that is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off there.
I mean, that works.
Yeah, let's drink a shot every time someone gets killed, kind of thing.
Let's do
so
it.
You'd be barely buzzing for most of the film, and then at the end, you
you'd be on the floor.
More
So is
more
my
anime
turn here for the first impressions, or
I just I just had a joke with the drinking game. This is more anime related, but there was this Lupin miniseries about Fujiko, and me and my friend had this game we'd play. It was like drink for nipples and owls, and there were like 20 some drinks in the opening credits.
I'm down.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You wouldn't remember much else of the show.
Fuck it.
well, I don't know, you knocked yourself out pretty quick. I think we only successfully did it like once before we were like, okay, this is too much. But anyway, yeah. So your first impressions, mostly.
Okay, well, here's a drinking game for this one. Every time someone references a movie,
There you go. I mean,
Oh,
especially if you're
okay.
taking shots, you would get about 8 or 9 of them in you at least.
Every name drop.
Well, see, Scream for me was definitely different than a lot of your guys' experiences with it. I saw that shit when it was fresh. So for me, it was my older cousins, Amanda, and I think Chrissy. Not that it fucking matters. They reserved the shit at the video store, right? So we saw that as soon as it was available on home video, basically. And so I didn't have Scary Movie or anything like that diluting it for me. And it was genuinely good. I was a lot more into horror movies, even as like an 8 or 9-year-old or whatever, than they were at like 6, the age a couple of you guys saw them as, later on. But definitely it freaked them out. And I my main memory of watching Scream the first time is sitting there the whole time laughing at them for being so scared and also thinking it was awesome. I think Scream borders right on being like a horror comedy to the point of that it's funny, but it doesn't cross that threshold into being such a horror comedy that it's making fun of horror. It's a good commentary on the formulaic nature of horror movies. That definitely was played out by that point. And it's also like a good nod from Wes Craven towards sort of making fun of like the movies that were made after his initial movies, like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. There's the whole part where they make a point to mention that like the first Nightmare was good, but the rest of them were stupid. I mean, it's definitely him taking a jab, but at the same time tributing other horror films. And I think that's something that the more times that you watch it as you get older and you watch more horror movies, it becomes more and more enjoyable as you view the movie repeatedly. So I think, my initial first impression of Scream though as a little kid was that it was awesome, and I thought that it was really cool that it was scaring the shit out of these older kids so much.
Yeah, it does have a very good balance between like actual frightening content along with that comedy vibe. Like it
walks the line.
It has a pretty unique balance of it. Like it can, depending on the mood you're in when you see it, it can play either way.
Yeah. It can be either making fun of horror movies or being like a genuine tribute to them while at the same time poking a fun at the formulaic sort of way that a lot of people did it, even arguably up to that point. As much as I love, I know what you did last summer or whatever. That's still a good example of sort of formulaic slasher movie shit, And Scream definitely took the piss on that stuff, and that's what's fun about it,
Trying to think, was I know what you did last summer before this or after?
It was after this.
Okay.
It was Kevin Williamson's follow-up to this one, I believe.
Okay.
Or to Scream 2, rather. Because, that was... they came out very close together, but it was not quite the same time frame. And again, you were talking about Scary Movie. Scary Movie came out around the time Scream 3 came out, or kind of in that ballpark. So it was a little later in the franchise. I did have kind of a Scary Movie moment, though, when I was watching 2, because you have Stab, the film within the film, takes the place starting with the second film.
Yeah.
And the girl that plays Casey Becker is Heather Graham. But in that particular moment, in that particular scene, I'm like, holy crap, she looks like Anna Faris. Oh. And of course, Anna Faris, the star of Scary Movie, it's like, wow, okay. I wonder if that's part of the reason Faris got the role. I don't know. But I don't know. Of course, one of my favorite throwaway jokes in Scary Movie was taken directly from Scream, and that was the scene where Sydney types on the computer to 911 asking for help.
So
And then
high
Scary
tech.
Movie, it's a white woman in trouble. And then you see all the cop cars.
See, you're not gonna get away from that referencing Scary Movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That-
So long
That's
since
really
I watched
one of the
this.
that's one of the only parts I would even bother with. Most of the film,
I mean, I
My
watched.
kid was up in here. She could point out every Scary Movie reference to everything because that's like her jam. But I have not watched this in so many years.
and of course the working title for Scream was Scary Movie, and the Weinsteins changed it. They said, "No, that's a terrible title. We're going to call it Scream." And Craven and Williamson were like, "No, oh, no, it works."
Yeah, I forgot they were like kind of involved with it. So
Right.
on rewatching it, it was sort of a funny moment. It's like, yeah, great work. When the credits came up, I was like, great work, guys. And it's like Harvey Weinstein. It's like, ugh.
I gotta point this out because I'm such a fan of the show itself. But creator of Dawson's Creek wrote this motherfucker right here, so that's
Right.
I almost asked
But I wanna wait for the last of you.
It's like, well, you won't have to wait long.
Well,
Well,
I will be right
is-
back because I actually have to go to the bathroom. But hopefully,
Okay.
Wow.
I'll die
This
in the process. And we'll prove
this
something.
this is also the second feature that we talked about that Nev Campbell is on, and Matthew Lillard. So that's one thing I wanted to point out.
Miss Kate
Yeah.
Ork.
Kevin Williamson did he did the Urban Legend, I think, after this, right? Or was that
Urban Legend.
I'm thinking of? I think I'm
Yeah.
confusing I Know What You Did Last Summer with Urban Legend.
I know he did. I know what you did last summer, and he also did. I think while he was working on the script for Scream 2, he was also working on Teaching Miss Tingle, which I did see that one as well. Forgotten it, but I saw it. But he was a hot property there for a minute. Didn't he also write The Faculty? Am I remembering that correctly?
I am not sure.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to
Gonna
look that up
check
now.
on that.
But yeah. So do we want to go back to your detailed plot?
Go back to our
summary?
detailed plot thing.
Yes.
It's like it's so weird. Like every time I take notes, it's like, okay, so here's how we're gonna walk through the plot, and then I just like type out the movie like almost scene for scene, and then it just drags on for a million years, and we get lost, and it's a mess.
Well, I'm
so I
still
think we're
alive,
gonna-
so I guess we got to try harder here.
He wrote
Yeah.
the screenplay for The Faculty, yes, back in
Yes.
1998. So
Mhm.
Well, we'll just move through and we will see. It's a great movie, and I'm sure that
Well,
we'll have some
all
great
right,
discussion.
Well,
Faculty.
we open up with the movie's kind of big opening set piece that like sets the tone. So Drew Barrymore's character, what is it? Her character's name is Casey, right?
Casey, yes.
Yeah. So Casey is home alone. She's making popcorn, getting ready to watch a movie, and she gets a phone call. And it starts off kind of innocuous at first, with it's the wrong number. It's like, I'm going to randomly talk to this guy, and eventually he starts asking her horror movie questions, and it just keeps getting creepier and creepier until, surprise, your boyfriend's tied up outside. Answer this question or he'll die.
Cell phones are cool.
Yeah, this was pretty early in the life cycle of like cell phones, or at least like
It really
cell
is.
phones.
Yeah.
Because
Though
the
not-
people had cell phones, but they were just like giant bricks. Like you could use them as a murder weapon.
Anyone who was a child of the 80s would have known a Motorola by its size.
Right.
Like a ham radio or something.
I think when this movie came out, I knew people who had cell phones, but I had
Yeah.
not even considered at that point that was going to be a normal thing for high schoolers.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
later
yeah.
on, it even is talked about like when they say he had a cell phone, and it's this thing. It's
Right.
like,
How about
Yeah,
this?
like it's only a handful that have them.
Does
Like he says,
Yeah.
like everybody has them when they're interrogating.
Yeah, that does remind me of there's a fun joke in I think it's American Wedding, like the American Reunion. Because the American Pie movies first came out sort of close-ish to this time.
99.
Yeah, 99. And there's a point in the movie where everybody it's happening in like 2009 and like everybody's older, and they have to like sneak somebody back into their room after some party. And Stifler's like, "Don't worry, guys, I got this covered. I used to do this all the time." And so like they knock on the door and it's like, "Hey, can we use your phone? Our car broke down." And the guy's like, "Mean to tell me none of you have cell phones?" And the other two guys are just like, "God damn it, Stifler, man!" It's like it's because he just didn't, because it wasn't a thing back then.
I think my favorite moment in that is when Jim's driving the girl home. Spice Girls comes on. I love classic rock.
Oh,
I feel that.
it's like the one scene. That's like the one scene in the movie I remember. So I had thankfully blocked that out. But
tell me what you want. What you really want.
Anyway,
Zega, or whatever the fuck they say.
So anyway, she gets one of the next question wrong, and we get our first Ghostface.
Right.
Kills her boyfriend, breaks into the house, and we get our first look at Ghostface, which Ghostface has kind of an interesting costume in that it's very anonymous. Like there's not a whole lot of detail. It's just that like screaming face mask and a black cloak. Like that's really it. Like it's so simplistic, and yet so hard to find a good version of.
But that's because there's not supposed to be good versions of it, dude. Like they make a point in the movie to mention that it's available at every Five and Dime. Like it's impossible to track the purchase of it because it's fucking everywhere. Like it's supposed to be a cheap Halloween costume. Like
but when you get good glimpses at it, it's actually a lot like thicker and more heavily tailored.
Better than the ones that you buy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, the costume one is like a $300 tailored thing.
Yeah,
but I just felt that was kind of funny that they make a big deal about it's a cheap, common costume, and then when you actually get the thing on it, it's like, this may be a little too cheap.
They also wanted it to look good, and my understanding is that they went through quite a few versions of it to hit on just the right one, but a lot of them were a lot more complex than what they ended up with. But
all right, we're definitely not going with this one, guys. We're going to put this one on the market. Okay.
But I do want to back up slightly with the actual conversation that Casey's having. Because one, you get that one part where right at the beginning, they're thumbing their nose at people who think they know horror with that whole Friday the 13th question, which is the one that she gets wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're like pointing out, she's like, who was the killer? And she's like, oh, it's Jason.
Surprisingly, one a lot of people get wrong. As a fun test, I went around and asked my brother, my mom, my uncle, and my cousin. And they all four of them got it wrong.
Right. But even before that, like the moment where you realize something is definitely not on the up and up is when she's still being playful and flirty. And she's like, why do you, something like, why do you want to know or whatever? And he's like, I want to know who I'm looking at.
Oh, I love
that. The first,
love it.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's like, that's just a moment where you're just like, oh, crap.
It's one of the few genuinely creepy moments in the movie where the cues in the score don't immediately give it away.
That first scene is so iconic because it's been repeated in media so often afterwards. It's always amazing when I think about it and I see it, and I'm trying to say to myself, wait, this isn't just some parody of it. This is the original. I mean, shoot, the movie itself parodies the darn thing after a while. But it's just cool to be able to say, I've actually sat there and I saw that for the first time, or even when you get to watch it again, it's like this is the original time they use that, and that's pretty cool. I mean, other than maybe something like When a Stranger Calls, maybe.
Yeah.
But again, that's a different angle. I would like to think.
It's totally different than the way it plays out in Scream. Like When a Stranger Calls is one of the most frequently sampled horror movies too, and like death metal and stuff like that. You hear that,
and we're not talking about that not too bad remake. We're talking about the original When a Stranger Calls too. So,
Dave, have you guys done that one yet?
We have
I don't
not.
think we have, no.
It might be an important one to hit eventually.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so Casey's running from Ghostface, and he eventually catches her outside, and this has some of the nastiest stabbing like I've ever seen, because you don't quite know what to expect until like in these movies, until you see like the first kill, like what kind of level of violence you're in for. And this was pretty nasty pretty immediately. So
gave the MPA a heart attack, apparently.
Oh no!
Did it really?
Oh no! Drew Barrymore's dead. Oh my god!
It's such a nice touch how he fucking like, and you can tell like he's getting her, and like he has her down, and he's about to give that coup de grace, and she rips the face off his mask. You can tell she rips the mask off his face. So for a second, Drew Barrymore saw who the killer really was, and then he stabs her in the fucking neck. And then after that, she's trying to tell her parents, but she can't, because I mean, that's to me is such a genius touch on that.
Yeah, they made sure that they had like some accuracy as to where you would get stabbed so that you wouldn't be able to talk.
Yeah, she's trying to scream to her parents, but she can't.
Like she's able to crawl away from Ghostface for a few months. Her parents are coming home and like walking through the door, and if they just looked, 10 feet to their left. It's kind of funny almost. Like, how
do you really do that when you're walking into your house? I mean, honestly, I come into someone could murder me any given day of the week when I'm walking into my house, because I'm usually just taking in my pocket for the keys, and I'm like, I'm just going inside, Like,
granted, they were deep in conversation, but
I will say too, that scene was, for me, the most nostalgic scene in this rewatch, because I rewatched it with my girlfriend and she was absolutely fucking flipping out, and it took me right back to watching it with my cousins when they reserved it from the video store, because they were having the same reaction at the time. Like they were like, no, like it was amazing. I love watching horror movies with people and they have that reaction.
Well, this time around, you're only set up for the fall by the opening scene. It was only, I think, 12 minutes, but it was kind of the same fake out they pulled in Nightmare on Elm Street and Psycho, where they set someone up to be apparently the heroine, and then no.
In a way,
and especially Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore was kind of a big deal back then.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, they cast Drew Barrymore. She must be the lead. Wait, what's happening? Oh,
she's on the goddamn poster, like
she's the first victim.
Yeah.
She was one of the reasons. She was one of the main reasons Wes Craven got involved, and one of the reasons Neve Campbell got involved. So it's like it would have been a totally different movie if she hadn't asked to be in it.
Now we got Neve Campbell. We can get rid of the bitch.
As brief as her part is in the movie, it makes the whole damn thing work.
Oh,
yeah. Even though she was in there very, very briefly, I think that it's one of the most impactful scenes in the movie. Is that opener? So.
Anybody from this too. Ooh, everybody all at once.
If anybody remembers anything from that movie, it's going to be that first scene.
Right.
But actually, though, a question to anybody else. Did anybody else ever think, at least one time when you're going through there, like, no, get the Jiffy pot pop off of the stove. It's going to burn.
It doesn't take it off sooner.
Like, my parents come
If I
home,
was
there's a
in a
fire alarm
tense
going.
situation, that's the first thing probably I would do, so I'm not breathing popcorn smoke the whole time I'm trying to deal with it. You know,
that's like the first thing, like that you try to think about before you get killed. Like, okay, shouldn't I get this thing fucking off the stove or some shit?
at least leave
Use
some
it as
good
a weapon.
popcorn for the people that find you dead to eat. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I
you
think
gotta
the purpose
feed-
of that was to show how quickly all of this happened. Because she starts
Yeah.
But it
popping it,
doesn't happen
and by the time
quickly,
it's done,
bro.
she's
Like
dead.
it's fucking like a long, drawn out scene, and she comes into the kitchen at one point. I watched it twice. I'm sorry if any of this gets too like deeply analyzing it, but she walked in there once already in the movie and saw it on there, and she almost takes it off. If you remember right, like she almost goes over there and takes it off, but then the phone rings again. Like, I would have still whipped it off and put it in the sink.
Well, that's
and
that
then
classic.
answered the phone.
That's that classic trope that a girl has to answer her phone. You know.
What?
Yeah, they really played that in the second movie with Sydney and that frat call. But anyway, I think I saw the commentary where they described it as the popping is sort of a timer, and like once it really gets out of control, it mirrors when this scene itself gets totally out of control. So I'm like, well, that's kind of a fun way to put it, I guess.
It is.
But I do like the idea that she could have gone in there and she has this hot object. It would have made a good weapon. But
it would have. I'd have blasted that sumbitch right in the face.
Right.
It probably would have worked too, considering like what we see later.
Right.
Like Wes Craven made the comment that I like how our killer is kind of klutzy and like very mortal.
Right.
Because he's tripping on stuff. He's getting nailed with like bottles and shit.
Yeah,
Well,
how
like,
many
he
horror
runs in
villains
obvious pain like every time he goes down.
Because
Kind of hilarious.
Obviously, the people listening know we're gonna spoil it, but it is a couple of high school kids doing this shit.
Yeah.
And
True.
that's what, to me, like, especially in hindsight, watching it makes it. There's so many subtle little things that really do give away the whole spoiler if you're really watching it, right? Like the moment that the fucking cell phone drops out of his pocket, the audio, like the cues and the score alone, which is my main complaint about the movie. I'm sure we'll get to it, but that alone, like, kind of gives it away.
Yeah, that comes up pretty soon-ish.
Sorry to jump the gun there, bro, but
Oh.
I like to try to keep it orderly. I never succeed, but I like to try.
One last thing on that opening. One last thing on the opening scene. I don't know if we've mentioned yet, but another part that I always found very, very unsettling, and I love the movie for it, is when again, Casey can't scream, she can't call out, but she still has the phone and it's still on.
Mm-hmm.
And then when their parents try to call the cops, it's like,
and they tune into that same like they pick up the phone when she's on the line and she's like,
you can hear the gurgling.
Yeah. It's like, what more horrifying thing could they have had happen?
Probably the gutting too.
Well, that, but
I think for my assumption, whether you like the rest of the movie or not, that opener of Scream is one of the most solidly put together and played out scenes in horror movie history, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Every bit of it,
I mean,
definitely.
Whenever you think of the babysitter, Home Alone, you always think of either Scream or When a Stranger Calls. I think.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and anyway, that has a fairly memorable finish where her parents, like, they go outside and they see her hanging from a tree, with her guts spilled everywhere, and it's kind of a level of like.
That's actually a kind of a terrifying scene because when the parents open that door, it's like, oh my god, it's like she's hanging there on the tree, and It's very short. Short on
It's very brief, but it like sticks with you.
Had to be.
Sure.
Had
And
to
one
be.
thing-
They had to butcher that scene.
Yeah, and
One thing that I
another
did
fun-
not realize before going into this is that apparently there's like cut versions of Scream going on out there. So my girlfriend did not remember the part where they zoomed in on her hanging from the tree, or the bit where the dude has his guts ripped out, like when she turned, her boyfriend.
Yeah, her boyfriend gets disemboweled.
Like she didn't remember either of those bits, and she'd seen Scream a bunch of times. Like she was super stoked when you guys said that we were doing Scream because she'd probably seen it more times than I did. And
There are always kind of like weird things that happen. Like if you've only seen something on TV and then you see it like uncut, like there are a bunch of surprises. Like I had really bad luck with that. My freshman year of undergrad, like I would introduce my girlfriend at the time to movies, and there would always be like way more explicit like sexual content than I remembered. It's like, oh, let's watch Bad Santa. It's like,
that's
oh,
fun, bro.
the girl has
I remember
Santa
seeing
Claus
movies
when he's
like
in the
that growing up
costume
too
many
on
times.
TV, and then getting the actual DVD copies of them and stuff, and being stoked to see that shit. So in a way, you actually
It
are
was like embarrassing though, because it's like, I didn't remember that part, or like some of the dialogue in National Lampoon's Vacation. It's like, my daddy says I'm a great kisser. It's like that line wasn't on TV. What the fuck? So it was an unpleasant surprise for me.
Yeah, sometimes they add things from stuff that wasn't on the TV because you know what, they censor it.
Yep.
Do you guys remember when they would just insert a word when they would censor things? So it'd be like,
Right.
oh man, I remember seeing
or
so many
just
Steven
bleep it
Seagal
out.
movies like that back in the day where they would insert and like, I seriously thought he said seagull right there or something,
Or like Tremors.
That's okay.
We killed that mother humper.
Or like
Roger that. There are two more. I repeat, two
or
more
like
mother humpers.
you know darn well Jeff Goldblum said no, that is one big pile of shit, and yet when you go into video stores and they're playing that scene over and over, that's not what they're saying.
Right.
Anyway, trying to get back to the Drew Barrymore thing. Just a fun thing on the vinyl soundtrack for Scream, like the art on the first side is like Drew Barrymore's like top half like hanging from the tree, and like her guts are like a phone cord.
It's glorious.
Yeah, I was kind of like, damn.
And what a soundtrack it is. We'll have to get to that.
Pretty good soundtrack.
soon.
We'll get to it. I have that. That's a more coherent part than my plot notes for sure. So anyway, after that, I can't remember if we meet Sydney then or at school.
Yes.
We do meet Sydney then?
I think the next scene, was the scene in her bedroom where Billy comes in through the window.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the hauntingly best scenes in the movie to me, for the simple reason that they have that super soft cover of Don't Fear the Reaper playing in the background.
Yes.
And
one of the best uses of music.
Holy shit, dude, is that amazing. Like if you ever had like a high school girlfriend too, it takes you right back to that feeling, I think.
Yeah. Nostalgia there.
Yeah, that was a heavy scene for me rewatching this time, both times.
Well, and of course,
conversely, I only noticed it this time. Like I don't think I ever heard it before. I've seen this like 3 times.
Honestly,
very
in all the years that I've watched Scream, this was the first time I noticed actually that song too, and it really fucking for some reason hit home with me.
Well, and Don't Fear the Reaper is another reason why I like Stephen King's The Stand. So
see, that's where I always associate it with The Stand.
Well, from what I understand,
go ahead.
From what I understand, I think they used the song as well in Halloween, and this was used as a direct callback to Halloween.
Yeah, well, they also did a direct callback to Halloween in their trope session, the drinking session where they were.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that was like an example of how they used the song on multiple levels, and not to mention the idea of Billy coming in through the window was a nod to Nightmare on Elm Street. So like the whole scene had a whole bunch of homages mixed in.
It really did.
But it was also just a fun little intro for both of them.
Like I think in terms of like beautifully done scenes in the movie, I think that takes the cake for me.
Well,
like,
and
just so simple but so impactful, you know.
An interesting case of young love, at least on one side. Sure.
Yeah, very interesting. When your boyfriend says, I was watching The Exorcist and I got to thinking about you.
I guess just turned right around, eh?
I'm that boring, eh? Damn.
But, granted, it is a film where your mind might wander, but...
Yeah, I just would like to add, like, Don't Feed the Reaper has been kind of ruined for me by Supernatural because, what was it, season 4 or 5? There was one season where they played it during the credits of like every episode, and it was just like, I am so sick of this song.
I'll tell you right now, I've seen Blue Oyster Cult live like 3-4 times, and don't let that shit ruin it for you, bro. It's definitely still a good song.
Oh, yeah.
I feel the same way about Def Leppard. I had a friend who would just play it, nothing but Def Leppard in the car, like on every 9-hour drive back to campus.
I don't know that I ever pay money to see Def Leppard live, but that's a different
story. They suck, don't do it.
Actually, speaking of bands that some people just are at very, very different levels of fandom with. One little change that I enjoyed a lot, again, I in preparation for this, I revisited 2 and 3. I was going to revisit 4. I will in the next few days. So it's interesting to see how much of a basic, cheap slasher film Stab really is, especially when you compare it with this film. Because one group I have seen live that did one hell of a show was the Indigo Girls, and I love how they have
a poster, yeah, and
then in Stab the poster is Creed, and I'm like, well, that's a drop down, or 2 or 5.
Say Creed?
Yes,
that is, yeah.
But Creed was even a thing.
It was flash in the pan.
But I knew people who absolutely loved them.
Well, I mean,
stop pretending like you aren't one of them, bro. Come on, let's just admit it. Creed was
anyway. What the hell happened? Back on track. God damn it! Fuck. What was I saying? This is your fault. I blame you.
I'm sorry. Just keep up blame
anyway,
on them.
So we're introduced to Sydney and her boyfriend Billy. Her dad comes in and sort of chases Billy off, and we get kind of like our first like running gag. Like there's no, the trope is frontal nudity in horror movies, and the gag that we get is like Sydney does she flashes Billy, but we don't see anything. And I don't think in the entire series there's a scene where she is topless, but we don't see anything.
Well, she established herself as a tease basically from the get-go, so I don't think that's really too surprising.
Oh, you're talking about Rose Miguel.
They do.
No, we're talking about Nev Campbell.
Did we get to see her naked tell Wild Things, or did we even get to see her naked in Wild Things?
I don't know.
Actually, Wild Things was when you first get to, yes. That was when she first did.
It's never been important to me, so I can.
It was to us, dude.
It was.
That's one thing that
you rented Wild Things. That was just a thing you did.
You know what I kept thinking about Nev Campbell? Campbell as I kept going. She always looked like she was about to cry. That's the thing, I mean, if you ever look close at her eyes, it's like. She had just that kind of expression, like she was going to cry, but just was holding back.
Well,
Right.
we are 50 minutes into our episode and about, 15 into the movie?
Well,
You're breaking it down, bro.
Okay.
To hit the character Billy, since we were introduced to him, I figure we can hit the characters and do that two birds with one stone.
Right.
Well, in the next scene, we meet everybody in the cast anyway.
Yeah, so
The next
everybody's
day,
pretty much
everybody's
there,
talking about, oh, did you hear what happened to Casey and her boyfriend?
Well, and I don't
they're
think
all talking around
Braxton
the
really
phone.
got to fully throw his shit down. So
All right.
Well, I mean that's the thing. Yeah, I mean as you agree, the all of them have been introduced at that point. But yeah, is it me or was Billy established to almost make you just believe that he was a red herring? I mean, he came across as such a serial killer, just in general,
Right.
that you would have to think it can't possibly be this guy. That would be too obvious to make this particular thing work. I mean, that death stare he gives in one of the scenes just later when they're at the video store.
looking at it through the window when he's being interrogated. Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Not to mention the deadpan for almost Johnny Depp lookalike.
Yeah.
See, for
bit.
me, like once you get over him looking like Gavin Rossdale from Bush, which is pretty much like the first half of the movie for me. Yes, definitely once he's in the interrogation room, you start thinking like, this guy can't possibly be the dude. Like he has so many reasons not to be. But once you see him at the video store later when they like accost Jamie Kennedy's, that's his name, right?
Randy.
Jamie Kennedy's character.
Randy.
Like that's when you know it's them. To me, you know.
Well, and it is notable that Randy correctly points out the killers during the course of the film, but no one else really does.
And everybody's really listening to that guy. So
Right.
he's kind of like Randy is kind of like the weird friend that they all have.
He's kind of like that friend that you have that's taking LARP way too seriously. You know? That fucking nobody listens to or takes serious because it's like, all right, this guy thinks he's an elf though. Yeah, like, no one's listening to him.
Actually,
I would.
One of the few moments that someone took him seriously, I think, was one where he wasn't necessarily aiming for that at all, and I loved it. And I loved in the commentary, Wes Craven's like, I tried 3 extras before I got the one that had the right reaction. And that was the scene in the video store where Randy says, there's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend. And you see that woman behind him look up and then walk away.
It's kind of true.
That'll come into play a little bit later. That was something that relates to something that I didn't quite understand about the plot. And it's like, well, I guess that's as far as we're going to go into that.
Much as I love my girlfriend, if she turned up dead, I'd be the first suspect. I would be like, yeah, that's fair. You know,
and
based on the arguments that you have, you know, like
going back to the characters we meet from Sydney's friend group here, we meet Tatum, who's kind of her more assertive friend.
Worst character in the movie.
Yeah, she's kind of mean. So her brother is Dewey, and he's like, is he like a deputy or an officer? He seems to have some kind of he seems to have some kind of rank.
Deputy Doofy.
Actually, it's kind of funny.
Don't you dare.
The actor that plays him, in some of the interviews I saw, he's like, yeah, people call me Officer Doofy all the time. It's like, no, my name is Dewey. He says it just like that in the interview. It's like, I play Officer Dewey, not Doofy.
So you can thank Scary Movie for that.
I know. It's like, hell,
Score one.
Calling him Doofy.
Score one for a Scary Movie.
Yeah, it has a pretty great soundtrack too. I mean, especially that killer rap. Like I listened to that at the gym. Anyway, overshared. So there's not a whole lot of depth to Tatum's character, really, is there?
Not really.
She exists simply to be the girl that like derides Stewie, who, if we're all being honest, is the best character of the movie.
Well, and
Crazy.
Dewey is awesome.
she does have kind of a scene, isn't it, where
Where
she
gets
is
crushed in the door. Yeah, that's the best one.
yeah.
Uh,
Where she's like, "What you want me to be the actress that
You want me to play the helpless victim?
exactly?"
this
Face like
girl
nods.
that you root to get killed, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't think there's a person in the world that's watched Scream that sees that part where she gets crunched in that fucking garage door that it doesn't immediately raise their hands and cheer.
Well, I was too busy flinching that she got crunched in the
didn't.
garage door.
I thought so. That kind of takes me. That scene kind of took me out of the movie because garage doors have like safety things.
I
so
know,
that
dude.
couldn't actually
I
happen.
used
That
to
couldn't
skate
actually
in front
happen.
of my garage door a bunch back as a kid, and definitely we used to put it down on us for funny pictures. It won't kill you, but you know, it's funny
They
to
wouldn't even
think
be
about.
able to lift her.
It wouldn't even damage your skin, you know. Like we used to lower the garage door on ourselves and take pictures like for our parents on Polaroids and shit. And we used to skate around in front of it all the time. Like if it was gonna kill us at some point, it would have done.
That was back when garage doors didn't have that automatic okay, let's go back up feature.
Dude,
you
they
know?
still didn't kill you back then. Like, they shut me
So-
open. That was it.
So we also
Well,
had
And anyway, so the other character we meet Randy. You know, we already talked about Randy, and then we meet Stu, who's Billy's friend, and he's
Right.
just kind of a jerk. It was the
crazy
impression.
dude.
He's kind of like the Stifler of the group.
Yeah, he's basically
Yeah.
just like this dumbass who follows Billy around and does what Billy says.
Yeah,
Which is almost foreshadowing in and of itself.
right. Well, there's one part where Randy specifically calls him Billy's lapdog, and that really is pretty much in some ways, the case.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially this later movie just keeps showing off.
Rest in peace, Matthew Lillard's career after Scooby Doo. We
Wait,
miss you, buddy.
No. He
doesn't he still?
yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. This is the second Matthew Lillard one we've done this in the last few weeks.
Yeah,
But
agree. We should
Yeah,
at least.
he was in 13 Ghosts. That's right.
Yep.
Yep.
He
of
used
course,
to
we
be-
also there's also the scene where you meet, of course, the other major player, Gail Weathers. The
Played by Courtney Cox
yeah,
from Friends.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dewey's played by David Arquette's his name, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of funny, like throughout working on the Scream movies together, like
Mhm.
they eventually they eventually got married. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
It's
And they're
kinda funny,
still fucking married, dude.
Like
So
No, they
together.
divorced.
Did they divorce?
They divorced. They
They've
They
stayed
divorced.
married for a long time, though.
they did.
And
I
that
think they
definitely is not an example of like Hollywood marriage where they
Right.
stay together to be prominent, because neither of them were, you know.
When did they divorce? Like last I heard, they were still together.
Like 2013 or something.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong, but I feel like they divorced before Scream 4. Let me check that out though.
I thought they
Either
were
way,
together
to
on
me,
Scream
it's still
4.
cool because
No,
the
it would have been
fact that
after.
they weren't an example, because a lot of Hollywood marriages are an example of people that marry each other to be like more famous, you know.
Right.
That shit definitely was not that. You know?
Right.
It was them being married because they loved each other or some shit, you know.
Okay.
I will say this
I'm looking
about
at Dewey.
Dewey. He is probably one of the more he is one of the characters that actually develops the most throughout the movie series, other than maybe Sydney. And I'm not sure about development with Sydney as much as I feel like Sydney was kind of more a lateral move, or just more grizzled or not grizzled, but toughened.
Yes, she becomes
Whereas-
more grizzled.
But,
I
But,
made the mistake of holding back on the sequel, so you guys know more than I do.
Oh man, she did.
It's been
I
a
felt
while.
like Dewey did definitely.
Fuck.
It's been a while.
What were you
You're a
saying,
bad
Brandon?
person, Courtney Cox.
Hold up, Brandon
I was
had
just saying that he definitely improved over the series because he was more of the incompetent or slightly incompetent deputy when he first starts, and you see the confidence level and the competence level go up as the movies go on.
Oh, Dewey? Yeah. That's fucking good.
Yeah, in the first
Definitely
movie, those Officer Doofy jokes. There's a reason people get them confused.
Dude, it's right here in my notes. Like, Dewey is my favorite character in the movie because
Isn't he the police chief in the fourth one?
Everything that fucking he just mentioned,
Right. Now, of course, the police chief in the first one was a holdover from Nightmare on Elm Street, if I remember correctly.
He's supposed to kind of look like,
Well,
the
he's the same actor. Yeah. And that scene also is where we meet the Fonz.
Yeah,
I was actually
played by Henry Winkler.
Yeah,
just like this kind of fun, like throwaway thing.
Dude, his sequence in the movie is one of my favorite things about Scream, for sure.
Right.
Oh, when he comes out the door
on those kids.
When he comes out the door and says, "Hey, you assholes," and then sees a janitor in a Freddy Krueger uniform.
Even before that, like he's going fucking hard on those kids.
Yeah.
And that's Wes Craven, by the way, in the Freddy sweater.
Yes, it is.
Like that was his Hitchcock moment. But anyway,
honestly, fuck all that. Like the Henry Winkler part where he's dragging those scissors across those kids' chest, and he's like telling them, "You insensitive little shits." Like, that needs to be what's going on nowadays. Honestly, I think with a lot of kids.
That bothered the MPA too. They thought he was a poor. Yeah.
Anyway, so after we're introduced to like our whole cast, in the next scene, so Sydney gets her own call, and so we have her first encounter with Ghostface,
right?
And it's a little bit like prophetic, the conversation that they have. It's like, what's the point? It's always some big-breasted idiot, running up the stairs from the stupid killer when she should be running out the front door. And then when Ghostface attacks her, she chained the front door, so she has to run up the stairs.
Yeah.
That's a fun touch.
Okay, I hate to say this, but my battery is overheating. I'm going to have to leave and let it cool down for a few minutes, so I'll be back.
You break my heart. You're going to come back, right?
I'll be back if I can. Yep.
I hope so.
And so anyway, like I thought that was a pretty good scene.
It was. It was a good sort of immediately, like she'd criticized that trope, but then she has to resort to it herself. That was
exactly. And then that's where we get the she calls 911 using the internet over the internet, which I didn't even realize you could do.
Can you do that? I know my wife. We were watching this together upstairs the other night. She's like, after all these years, I still don't know how she did that. A 911 call. I'm thinking to myself, is it really
possible? But I can't say for sure.
Well, modems were tied into phone lines, so I think there was probably
back then
way you could make
maybe.
Anyway, there's kind of a good touch there because in the scene where Billy sneaks into her room the first time, she has a closet like next to her room door, and when you open the closet, like the room door can't be opened, like it jams, and she uses that to like block off the door so that Ghostface can't get in. And so she calls 911 with that stalling Ghostface. Ghostface disappears, and then Billy shows up at her window. It's like, "Hey, I heard shouting. Are you okay?" It's like, "Oh, good, you're here." And the cell phone falls out of his pocket, and it's like, "Oh, well, shit, that's him." And then
yes, it must be you. Yeah, to me that
him, like, right away.
Abrupt. I don't know.
Well, I mean, one of the things we were talking about the cell phone at the beginning, and of course them saying, "Well, he had a cell phone," and then of course that line's like, "Doesn't everybody?" And of course, back in that time period, in a way, it makes sense because there was a generational gap because a lot of the older generations didn't have cell phones.
Yeah, but the kids in high school,
It was all
And all the kids did.
it was all the richer kids that ended up having cell phones.
Yeah, and all these kids basically lived in mansions that we saw, so I mean, they could have afforded cell phones.
Definitely had a fucking cell phone. Like, I don't know. That's my main issue with the movie is that scene because it's like, okay, obviously we all know in hindsight it turns out to be him, right? But
yeah, but they did a really good job of making it like look like a red herring anyway. Like the trick works
because later she fucking does admit to him at the school, like, I'm sorry, or she actually does say I'm sorry to him or whatever.
Is this working?
Yeah,
Yes.
sounds fine.
Okay, good.
I just don't know that it makes sense to assume that right away based on that knowledge.
Yeah. I think it's more of an older generation making the assumption more than the younger generation. Because, again, a lot of them probably, they didn't think about cell phones. And it probably just wrote it off as this weird technology. So it could just be more of a show of being out of touch. If that makes sense, out of touch with the new thing. It's just like with me talking with the younger kids when I see them in my therapy practice and talking about Fortnite. And if I hit the wrong demographic, it's like Fortnite. No, that's old. That's old people what they do. But if I hit the right one, it's like Fortnite. Yeah, that's all I play. It's that kind of thing. You kind of maybe that's what they were trying to show.
Yeah.
It's a joke from Chapo Trap House. It's like, Grandma, would you like some chocolate coins? It's like, how about I get a cat girl skin for Fortnite instead, Grandma?
Yeah.
But anyway, so after Billy's arrested, we get like a bunch of exposition, pretty much. Just at the police station. It's like, oh, well, how could he have done this? It's like, oh, we have to trace his phone. And really, really not a whole lot. Like, more so just like, okay, here's information you need to know. And yeah. So, did anybody else remember anything particularly important during the police station sequence?
I thought the whole stuff that they did with the media in Scream, like through those sequences, was really important because it shows. I mean, again, like nowadays, or even back then, no way would those media people be at the school like harassing the kids like that. That's just not the way that works.
I did totally forget that we got to see Sydney like punch Gale.
Yeah,
Yes.
she punches her ass the fuck out.
Well, that was leaving the police station, was it not?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
They were out behind it. Like Dewey tried to take him out the back and give him an out. Yeah, but I thought that
not to mention that the original murder was on every single station.
Yeah.
Well, that's the things in Scream. They definitely take a point. They take and put in the opportunity to definitely make a commentary on how fucking ravenous and sort of unscrupulous the press can be,
Yeah.
And I think in its own way, that's kind of ahead of its time, right? Like other horror movies weren't really.
So when Sydney's mom was murdered the previous year, Gale was kind of like at the head of all the media coverage of that.
She wrote a book on it and everything.
Yeah. And so they have this kind of history too, and they have this history, and that's why
He's like, "Fuck you, bitch."
Yeah, pretty much.
Did anybody else have like a brief memory of Die Hard, that last scene where she just punches out the reporter at the end? I don't know why, but
maybe now
every time I see that scene, I think of that other scene.
I was gonna say Predator 2, because I like. There's, without getting too into it, there's a certain journalist who is extremely dishonest. Like he goes to every like Antifa
Oh,
rally
I
and
know
they
exactly
just like
what you're talking about.
provokes them into like shouting things, and then he's like, "See, they attacked me," and it makes me think of that scene along with the scene from like Predator 2, where like the reporter just gets right in Danny Glover's face after the Predator like kills a bunch of people like right in front of him. It's like, hey, more victims, more mutilations. Fuck you, wham. It just makes me think of that. Like that's I think still my favorite one.
See, I didn't make the connection, but definitely I understood the motivation of like punching her. Yeah.
Do you know one thing that kind of amuses me is that the Miramax, the people, the powers that be, fought the casting of Courtney Cox. She wanted to play someone against type, you have Monica on Friends, but they thinking, no, she's Monica on Friends. She can't do this. And I'm sitting there going, I have watched all 10 seasons of Friends. And I'm sorry, Monica can be every bit as self-serving and vicious as Gail Weathers.
Right?
If anything,
I brought that up last night. My girlfriend was watching it with me. She was like, "That's totally out of character for her," and I was like, "How?" Yeah. Again, it's not that far off from something Monica would say to someone.
right. Yeah, I just find that kind of amusing that they were such the.
I love that I'm not the only person who thought that. That's fucking.
Oh, Septum hates Friends. He'll tell you.
I love Friends, but that's definitely true.
I'm sorry. I get a kick out of the monkey humping David Schwimmer's leg. So
I remember that scene in this. What the F?
Well, that monkey was awesome.
Anyway, so that part of my plot summation is just simply listed as stuff at school and Billy released, so the cops have to let him go.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a bunch of like expositional stuff at the school. Ghostface does appear and chase Sydney very briefly at the school. Like kids are playing pranks, like because the costume is so readily available. They're just like, "Hey, look at me, I'm the killer," which is honestly a pretty stupid thing to do, since there are armed cops like there.
I love that part. I don't know. Just
so anyway, like the principal is like yelling at some of the kids that they've been caught with the costume. It's like, "You're expelled!" And after a while, like we see him just kind of messing around with the costume, like in his office. And I have in my notes, Ghostface kills Fonzie, which that was fun. You never get to see Henry Winkler, brutally murdered on camera all that often.
And I think that was something cinematographical, because at the end of that scene, you see Ghostface in his eyeball.
That was a poster.
That was a cool shot. That was a cool effect. I like that.
Oh, is that
one of the posters for Scream? The promotional posters was that image of the Scream on like the Ghostface on the eyeball.
Right.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, they added that because they needed a couple more kills to really kind of punctuate it up, because it was the pacing was a little slow.
Definitely a promotional image for Scream for at least a little bit, because I remember seeing that and like seeing that being the whole spread. Was that fucking image of the mask on the eyeball.
Yeah.
Apparently, Bob Weinstein came right out and said, "We got 30 minutes of nothing. You got to kill someone." And apparently, that was a good. One of the things that was bothering them with the script was in that final party scene. There were way too many warm bodies in that room, and they were like, "How do we get rid of the non-essentials?" And then when they heard that the principal had been killed, the guys who were expelled were like, "Oh, cool, let's go see it." And yeah, that took a lot of them out of the picture right there. So it was kind of a handy way to fix a script problem. So,
that's interesting for sure.
I did like one little part in that scene. That's, of course, the part where you see Wes Craven as the janitor dressed as Freddy. But then you see I keep wanting to say Winkler or the Fonz. Hembry. Going back into the office, and he shuts the door, and there's a full-length mirror, and he's still holding up the mask, and he scares himself.
He scares himself. Yeah. Okay. Me and my girlfriend got a kick out of that.
I like that. And then apparently he did a little Fonzie move once he calmed down, you know. But
let's all get this one thing straight, though.
mhm.
The Ghostface did kill Henry Winkler, but
Yeah.
he would never have been able to kill the Fonz. The Fonz would have taken him out.
Well, no, he did kill Hembry because technically Winkler wasn't in the film. That is one thing I wanted to mention. He appears nowhere in the credits, in the promotion, nothing. They thought his name would detract from the other people in the film, so he worked uncredited.
Oh, so he was never there.
He was never there.
Brandon's right though. The Fonz never would have. He'd have fucking karate chopped him and then jumped the shark. That's what would have happened.
There we go. Let's just remake Sharknado with Henry Winkler. There we go. That would have been a fun film.
Oh god!
Oh, he could have jumped the Sharknado.
Jump the shark on the conversation, man.
Fonz wouldn't even bother to jump the Sharknado. He'd jump into it and
Jump
ride
the
it out
Sharknado.
He'd exit the
Wow.
Sharknado with a couple of girls on the back of the bike.
Anyway, so before Fonzie gets trashed by Ghostface, so there's an announcement. School's canceled for the rest. Everybody go home, and the students are like, "Yeah!" It's like curfew at 9. Boo! And then Stu is like, "Party at my house, yeah!" And so the next 15, 20 or so minutes are just the setup for this party.
Mm-hmm.
Like people are going out to Stu's house. Gail and her cameraman go out there just in case something happens. Like they install like a hidden camera in the house. Dewey goes out there.
Interestingly enough, the cameraman is the guy that played Meatloaf in the VH1 movie. I don't know if you guys remember that. But,
what?
It's actually pretty fucking
Wow.
spectacular. And I felt a little angry watching her talk shit to Meatloaf the whole time. So, he's about to bat out of hell all over her ass.
I have fuck Meatloaf.
Hey, come on now.
It's
Anything
somewhat.
for
It's
love.
a slightly long story. So when I was first getting into music, I saw Bat Out of Hell, and it's like, yeah, I was listening to stuff like Metallica and Rob Zombie, and I saw
Well,
that album
there you
art, and it was
go.
like, yeah, cool. And so me and my dad were at a bar, and I begged for money for the jukebox so I could play Bat Out
Yeah.
of Hell, and it's like, yeah, Bat Out of Hell, and then it's just like
Bat out of hell.
the
is an
it's like
amazing
the
rock
smooth,
opera.
it's like the smoothest, quietest,
It's not Metallica or Rob Zombie, bro.
effeminate
you gotta fucking-
ballad I'd
come
ever
at it like
heard.
what it
And
is.
everybody in the bar was just staring at me and Dad, and we had to leave.
Fuck
Oh,
it.
that's an epic song, though. It is an epic song.
If I was,
Could be
I'd have
worse.
listened to
You
that
could hear
whole album
Fuller.
start to finish with you on that jukebox if I'd have been there, and nobody looked at us otherwise because, God damn it, Bat Out of Hell rules.
It was
You could-
incredibly
you could,
embarrassing.
Debbie,
So
It could be worse. You could be at Parrot Karaoke and hearing 4 tone-deaf
Oh,
girls
good
belt
gosh.
out
It could
Paradise
have
by the
been.
Dashboard Light.
I strongly doubt that could be worse.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it was
it
worse.
was- it was
I
It
think
was
what
much
it boils
worse.
down to is you had a bad experience with Bat Out of Hell, but you need to listen to it again as an awesome rock opera.
I did try it 10 years later, and I was still like, "Fuck this." Anyway,
Anyway,
so
It's a preconception.
Sue's party.
everybody's gathered at Stu's house for the party, and so let's see. Do we get the? No, I did these in order. So anyway, Tatum goes out to the garage for some more beers, and that's where she has her run-in with Ghostface. And we already talked a little bit about that scene earlier. It's like, can I play the helpless victim? Mm-hmm. And he grabs her and cuts her arm with his knife to show her that it's real. And it seems like Ghostface sometimes he has like a target in mind, like a purpose for like going after this person, and sometimes it's just like he enjoys like the terror and the actual killing, like.
Which should have been the main focus the whole time. I think there are definitely times where it creeps into being a little bit cringy and pretentious, where they do like the cut on the arm to show it's real. Like, fuck that bitch. Like, why did she just, To me, it would have been more impactful.
Well, I think she would have thought that, he was just like, I think she would have just assumed it was a prank if,
and I like
if something hadn't happened to be like, no, you're really in danger. Like,
her head gets crunched like a beer can.
She clearly did assume it was a prank, and that's where it is notable that when she calls him Ghostface, that's the only time that's mentioned in the movie. But yeah. I kind of liked her line where she's like, "Don't kill me, I want to be in the sequel." It was like this obviously self-referential moment that I was like, well, obviously you're not going to be in the sequel because you asked for it. But, yeah.
I mean, she was in the sequel then, wasn't she, with that opening stab thing, huh?
Well, she wasn't, no.
Oh. I got my actresses confused. So
Fun fact, she eventually went on to marry Marilyn Manson, didn't she?
Yeah, I believe that was a short-lived one, wasn't it?
But, it was basically until it became non-gimmicky, and then they were like, "Well, I guess we did this thing."
And of course, this is the movie where she met Harvey Weinstein, and the rest is history, as they say.
A lot of history.
That's unfortunate.
But
anyway, so that seems kind of cool for Tatum because she puts a pretty good hurting on Ghostface. She's like throwing bottles at him, like they're hitting him like really. You can tell they're hitting him really hard.
Yeah.
She like ducks.
She just sucks so hard like through the first parts of the movie where she's in it, so it's hard to feel sympathetic for her.
And then she like combat masters him. It's kind of like, how did she not escape? Like. She makes a stupid play though. She tries to like crawl out through the doggy door of the garage, and Ghostface just like hits the button.
I love it.
And the garage door goes up. The garage door goes up like really fast, and just like crunches her up against
fucking like a beer can.
At first I thought there was like a blade up there, that it was going to guillotine her, but then her head went crunched. And I was like,
no, it just like breaks your neck.
Yeah.
And that was the only part of the movie I really had a problem with, because it was like, how would the door wouldn't support her weight like that? It just bothered me.
Like that, I mean, used to do that for fun when we would skate around, like I said, in front of our garage door back in the day, and we'd lower it on our various limbs. It just does not do that.
It would
like, and if you like held on to it, like it wouldn't be able to go up. Like
there's no way it breaks an arm, let alone a head.
It would have supported her weight. It just wouldn't have supported mine. I know that.
It's more of a suspension of disbelief, and
that's the only part that takes me out of it, and that's exactly what I was trying to say.
And actually,
that's the thing with horror.
The points they make a few times in the film is like with most horror films, you got to suspend your disbelief at a few.
Oh yeah.
Hey, check it. I'll be right back.
Yes, so this was also around the time that Randy gave the famous rules of the horror film, and
that's very
a fun scene.
There is one last thing about the scene with Tatum in the garage.
Okay.
If you look really close, I'm just gonna let this Wes Craven quote speak for itself and let you figure it out. It was cold that day.
Oh yes, it was.
Like I think on the commentary, he actually got quiet and just went, "It was cold that day."
Yes, just because there was no nudity does not mean there was no fan service.
Actually, though, that party, admittedly, it was kind of low key. If you go to all these other parties, it's always people are kind of just dancing around to the music and getting drunk. But I really like this party because it's this kind of just horror movie party where they're all gathered around, they're having drinks, they're just like talking crap about the movie, but they're but they're kind of having fun while doing it. That's just to me, I feel like that would be just the perfect Halloween party, just sitting around watching horror movies with a few of your favorite drinks in hand. It would just be just an awesome get together. I always thought that. When
it's not too big of a party too. There's like a dozen people there. Like it seems like a good party. Like there are enough people there that you wouldn't necessarily notice if two people like snuck off for a little while, you know?
Yep, boy, if I don't see a beer in your hand and if you're not at least a little buzzed by now, then I guess get the fuck out. You know, kind of a thing.
I'll let you guys take over the horror movie rules scene, which I don't love as much as most people do because
that's mostly bullshit. I mean, come on. There's people that survive based on those rules in almost every horror movie.
Well, it's one of those things where people are like, these are the rules. And then you think back to the movies you've watched and it's like, these don't really hold out all that often.
It's more of just the self-awareness. I mean, it's just like with Cabin in the Woods, which came later. I mean, I don't think that really Cabin in the Woods would have really existed without this sort of self-awareness in there. And it kind of expanded on this concept, which I hope one day we do Cabin in the Woods.
I'm down for sure. That was a great one.
Yeah, that was an awesome self-aware film right there. It took self-awareness to an entirely new level.
Well, part of it also is, if you look at the films, Randy is like a major film nerd, and I always liked Randy. I thought he was a fun character. He gets it wrong from time to time. Like, there's a part in the second film where a guy quotes a movie, and Randy corrects him, but the guy he corrected was correct in the first place. And he's one of those angry nerds that isn't always right.
But it's willing to accept when he isn't right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they should have killed him in the sequel.
No, I didn't like it.
In the commentary for that, Wes Craven was like, okay, now this scene is where we permanently lost a lot of people.
Yeah. That was unfortunate. I liked him, and especially in the second movie, but
like a lot of people say Scream 2 is their favorite. And then they all kind of hate 3. I'm the opposite. I like 3 and hate 2.
I love 2. 2 is my favorite in that.
That's mine.
It's been so long since I'd seen this particular film that all the sequels kind of blend in with each other. And Scary Movie for me.
Well, you have the added benefit of that you can
Scary Movie 1 and 2. I have to say, the rest can go suck a penis for all I care.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'd argue Scary Movie 2 through whatever just are all disregardable.
But you see, then you miss it because at the same time, that's when they introduce the Stab franchise, which to me it just makes it even more self-aware and expounds upon.
I'm not saying. I didn't say Scream 2 was bad. Like I said, Scary Movie 2 through 7.
Oh, Scary Movie, yeah, that's a different angle whatsoever. That's a new can of worms right there.
Oh yeah. Two is arguable.
The first 2 are fun. Outside of that,
take my strong hand.
Lord, guide my pimp hand and make it strong.
Well, they lost. They lost part of their creative team.
It's quotable, and that's why it's redeemable.
That was from the Boondocks.
Yeah.
Something that's actually good.
Yeah, that was good.
Anyway, so during the horror movie rule scene, we get all of the horror movie survival rules, which I don't remember, so I won't reiterate them. But of course, we get that fun line. It's like, never say "I'll be right back." Then Stu, "I'll be right back," and everybody's like, "Oh!"
And Randy, like, "I'll see you in the kitchen with a knife."
And then they find out I think isn't it like on the news or somebody gets a call or something that the principal was just found strung up in the football field, and everybody's like, "Sweet, let's go look before they take him down."
Yeah.
Everybody leaves.
Which is,
That's what
to
I would
me,
do.
one of the weirdest parts of the movie. Like, who gets phone calls updating them on school news? You know,
I think that kind of
it would have
news.
made more sense for it to come
a parent.
I guess, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
did they really break the death of school officials to you in those automated calls?
No.
Like, I get those as a parent, and usually it's like your kid doesn't have to go to come to school tomorrow. It's never anything like that guy's straight up dead. You know, like,
It's
that's
obvious.
not what fucking happens on
It's
that.
obvious Hembry made a lot of enemies. He obviously was not popular with the students. He treated them bad. So
obviously, a bunch of them wanted to see him dead, hanging. That's kind of like that's messed up, right?
To me, that guy fucking seemed pretty awesome. Honestly, the way he was coming at those kids with those fucking scissors and shit. He's like, "You heartless little shits!" Like, he's fucking. That was one of the best parts of the movie to me, where he's like, "You heartless shits! How about we
Coach Carter on
you
steroids
open and show everyone how it fucking feels?" You know,
like slashing sound effects on the scissors, everything.
Honestly, I think Wes was a little ahead of his time with that too. You know, because think of how people treat people nowadays with like shit on the internet. You know,
please report to the principal's office.
Anyway, so during the horror movie rules scene, he is explaining, if you have sex, you die. And everybody starts throwing popcorn at him. Meanwhile, while that's happening.
Actually, right after that, you had and don't drink or do drugs, and everyone raises their beard.
I love how Dustin too. We gotta give a heads up to Dustin right here for muscling through all of our bullshit tonight and just still trying to keep this on topic.
Yeah,
it's never gonna completely work, dude. I'm just telling you now. But
we got to try to keep it under like 2 hours at the very least.
Where we at?
We'll get there. We're almost done. Take us home.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was kind of like a neat way to set up like expectations. It's like if you have sex, you die, and then you see, Sydney have sex with Billy.
I'm honestly been trying to have sex all night to break all 3 rules on this podcast, but it's just not gonna happen, dude.
Well, I mean, I made that joke on Friday the 13th.
My lady does not think it's funny.
People were sharing like that. People were sharing like that meme like on Twitter.
Is that what you call Rosie these days?
It's Friday the 13th. Don't drink. Don't have sex. Don't blah blah blah. And like
I
retweeted that, and it was like, I am the killer. I will have sex.
Yeah, best anyway. Tomorrow. If I can have sex tomorrow and count it for part of this podcast, then we're good. But
I don't fucking care.
I failed. I tried.
Anyway,
the important parts is that I tried.
The part of that scene.
Go for it.
Well, I totally lose my place and train of thought with your fucking bullshit.
We love you, buddy. You got it.
Anyway, I thought that was kind of like a neat and a nice touch to set up, like the virgin, has to be the one to survive, and then like you see Sydney like lose her virginity, so it's sort of like a she's vulnerable now, she could die now, like sort of thing, or at least that's I think what his intention was in like setting up that expectation with that part of the horror movie rules scene, and then we're still pretty sure we've mostly been successfully misled that Billy probably isn't the killer, because he's been.
But he is. That's the main part where Scream fails to me. Is that like it definitely is obvious from that first scene.
He's still suspicious as hell, but you're kind of like, well, maybe not. Up until Ghostface comes up behind him and stabs the shit out of him, and then like the next. So meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Dewey and Gale are just kind of stumbling around in the woods surrounding the house. They find Sydney's dad's car, and Sydney's dad was kind of the suspect for this. For
a little bit.
even though he didn't, he was kind of like another false lead. So Craven did a really good job of having like multiple like fake leads, even though the killer
like a
way, it's still like misleading enough that
like
it can fool you.
like a whodunit kind of a thing.
Exactly, it's mostly a slasher and a mystery. This is a slasher mystery.
If you look at it, Stu and Billy set it up to make him a viable suspect. But of course, Stu was kind of overselling that. Back in that video store scene, he and Randy were talking, and Stu's like, "I think it's the father," and Randy's like, "No, he's probably dead somewhere, or he'll show up in the final reel," which is what he does. He shows up in the final reel.
Everyone's a suspect. Everyone in the movie are like,
to me, it's a little oversold. I'd probably agree with Jake on that. Like, it's oversold to the point where I don't know, man. Like, none of that stuff to me in Scream has ever felt like it wasn't sort of obvious,
I think
like
some of the other.
Well, I think one thing
without being as well, when I first saw this, like, I wasn't anywhere near as familiar with horror as I was like on my other viewings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was maybe the 10th slasher I'd ever seen, or something like that, like somewhere in the low numbers.
It might have been the first I saw.
It was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of nice, like, cause I can be kind of easy to trick sometimes.
That's good too. Yeah, honestly, there's nothing taken away from any of that. But like, that's really what the movie's supposed to do, is have that done. Yeah.
But anyway, so after Billy gets stabbed, Sydney gets chased for quite a while, like all over the house. Like, and then that's where we get more of, it's like, oh, she's tripping him. Oh, she's pushing him over. Oh, she's whacking him with doors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you'd think he would have like a concussion, like so fast. It's like, damn, how does he keep getting up? And I mean, like we find out, pretty quickly after that, that's Stu in that costume. And, Stu is in pretty good shape. Like, he looks like maybe he's like a high school athlete or something, but, still, he's taking some pretty hard hits.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't think he's as crazy as he is. Then, of course, Sydney gets away from him, gets outside, goes to the news van where she sees Kenny, and then they have that oh shit moment where the lag in the camera comes into play.
Yeah, they're watching through the hidden camera they have set up. They're watching Randy on the couch. He's watching Halloween, saying, "Look behind you, Jamie Lee Curtis," and Ghostface is behind him and like, "Look behind you," and it's like, take your own advice.
Nice joke there, because Jamie Kennedy, he's look behind you, Jamie. Look behind you.
Even better. I missed that.
And
so they're like,
"Why not kill Kenny?"
And notice how Ghostface is not reflected in the TV.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. That was a interesting touch, I thought, too.
Vampire.
I mean, that's sort of how his power works in Dead by Daylight. But anyway, so they're like, "Oh, we got to warn him." And then it's like, wait a minute, this is on 30-second delay because Ghostface heard Sydney screaming as she was running to the news van. And so they basically turn around just in time for Ghostface to like slash the cameraman's throat. And Sydney keeps running. And let's see here. A bunch of other things happen kind of all at once. Like Gail shows up and almost hits Sydney and like crashes the news van and finds the bodies. Like we're kind of in like breakneck speed mode here. Like Dewey,
it really doesn't fuck around in the last half.
Like he gets stabbed like right away. Dewey's like, "I'm here to help." Kind of like Groundskeeper Willie in that Treehouse of Horror. It's like, "I know how to save you." Wham, dead.
But that's a lot of these type of slasher movies. Is if you think about it, though they play around at the beginning, at the end, all the games are done. It's just like we're getting to business. We're getting down. We're taking everybody out.
You also scene of Sydney in the car with like you don't know if he's on the right or on the left, and then you see that back part opening up, and it's
that was a good
and I don't even think that we managed to cover the subplot that is behind this, because apparently a year before, her mother had died.
Yeah. So this leads up to our big reveal. So Sydney gets a hold of Dewey's gun, and Stu and Randy like show up in front of her. It's like, he's the killer. No, he's the killer. Let me in. No, let me in. Give me the gun. No, give me the gun. And she's just like, fuck you both, and like slams the door in their face. And then Billy staggers down the stairs, and she gives him the gun. Like, she's relieved. She's like, oh, good, you're okay. They let Randy in. Stu is kind of gone. Like, Stu just kind of disappears. And then Billy drops that psycho quote and shoots Randy, and it's like, oh crap, we were right the first time.
Yeah. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hokey, but
I mean, it was like in the old 80s or 90s cartoon, a pup named Scooby-Doo, where you had the character actually that was named a red herring, and he was always the red herring. Except this time, instead of being the obvious red herring, he was not.
And then a minute later, Shaggy comes in.
Zoink, Scoob!
My favorite version of that, I think, is probably just like from the Clue movie. It's like, so you're working for the Soviet Union? Communism is just a red herring.
The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming.
But anyway, so now when they were writing Scream, they weren't sure. It's like, should the killers have a motivation, or should there just be no reason like why they're doing this? And so they went with kind of a compromise. So Stu is committing murders because basically it like excites him. Like it, I hesitate to say it turns him on because they don't really make that clear, but pretty much, yeah. That's kind of like
kind of obvious.
It's like, he just likes killing people. Like it's like a thrill.
Man.
And then Billy. So Sydney's mom had an affair with Billy's dad, and so Billy's mom left their family, and so that's why the previous year Billy and Stu killed Sydney's mom and framed the other guy who went to jail for it.
Yeah.
And so, one of them has a pretty clear motive, and then Stu is just kind of like, yeah, it was fun, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's sometimes how it happens, man.
It's fun until it wasn't. But from what I understand, much of that final sequence was kind of on the fly or ad-libbed, and some of the best parts, I think. Like, I love when Sydney on the phone tells them she's called the cops. And then she's like, well, okay, so Billy, we know why Billy did it. So Stu, why are you doing this? And he's like, peer pressure, man. Billy yanks the phone back and then throws it at Stu, and that was an accident. But it worked. They just hit him on the head with the phone.
He just like whines, like,
and then he takes the phone back, and he's like, oh, my parents are going to be so mad. It's like, yeah, that's really the worst thing you got to worry about right now.
Yeah, but they have this long monologue about, this is why we did it. This is, what the rest of our plan is. We're going to frame your dad. We're going to stab each other. And there's, they're both like stabbing each other to like back up their story.
Yeah.
They're distracted by, Gail comes back with Dewey's gun and gives Sydney like enough time to kind of get away and like free her dad and grab the costume and the phone. And then they play like a really brief kind of cat and mouse game where, she takes out Billy, she puts the costume on, she surprises Billy and like knocks him out. And then she has like a struggle with Stu, and she ends up killing Stu by like smashing a TV on his head.
Yeah. Which kind of reminded me of like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of a thing.
A little bit, yeah.
Prime time, bitch.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was thinking that.
Oh, I love that. That is probably my favorite line from all of the Friday. Actually, That one and the bourbon line. Those are my two favorite in the entire series.
I like they pointed out in the commentary, and I like this way of looking at it. The irony that Stu was pretty much living in a scary movie at this point. He is pretty much checked out of reality, more or less.
Oh yeah.
So they pretty much killed him by pushing him literally into a scary movie.
Halloween is still playing, isn't it?
Yes. So
Nice.
I thought that was fun. But
anyway, so it turns out Randy's okay, and they have kind of like the moment of relief, and then it's like, oh wait, the killer has to appear for one more surprise, and then Gale just blasts Billy.
Yeah.
When he's like, he pops back up. Like, I think it's in either 2 or 3 where when the killer gets back up, they actually go ah, in like the most terrible cliche of all time, before being shot again.
Mickey does that in the second one.
That is the second one. Okay.
I think so.
And then anyway, so the ambulance arrives, and it's pretty much a wrap. Turns out Dewey's okay. And yeah, so it's not necessarily a short movie. Like, it kind of moves from like big moment to big moment.
But at an hour and 50 minutes, it also trucks right through the shit at a pace that definitely does not leave you sitting there twiddling your thumbs,
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, you're never bored.
Although I think the final chase with Sydney, I think that's something like 40 minutes of the runtime, isn't it?
Well, the party scene overall is about a 40-minute runtime.
Yeah, it's very long. Like, it almost feels like they could have cut some of it, but what could you really cut and still have it make as much sense as it does?
Almost none of it, dude. That's one thing that I dwelled on a lot over the last day, because I watched it with my girlfriend, and I definitely got stoned and drunk and fell asleep halfway through it. and then but it's one of the few horror movies too that you can start out at the midway point and not feel like you missed a bunch, which is definitely a mark that it should, the
story is kind of compartmentalized.
It really is. So it's one of those things, even if you fucking fell out of it halfway through it, you can definitely come back to it halfway through that shit and still feel like you're in the shit, I think it's a movie that plays out exactly how it's meant to play,
and it's
nobody can really complain about the runtime of it, because it fully fills the fucking runtime for sure.
Exactly, and there's a reason it's a lot of people's favorite movie.
Considering how many changes this movie went through from start to finish, how many script rewrites, how many ad-libs, how many edits to please the MPAA, it is fairly amazing that it came together as well as it did. And,
for real.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Of course, that was something that became an even bigger part with each installment, and they actively comment on it in the third one. The characters are always bitching about the script rewrites and all that kind of stuff. That was a major fact of life for this whole franchise.
Which I think was a way for director Wes Craven to fight back, against the studio, against all the rewrites and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
Which on that subject, how many of you guys fucking kept a little tally of the horror movies that they actually mentioned in Scream?
I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was just kind of kicking back and enjoying it.
I think IMDb.
That's a cool idea, though.
16 or 17 or so. I don't remember.
I mean, I can rattle off a few just based on so they definitely fucking mentioned Halloween.
Oh yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Those are the obvious ones. The one that most struck me was when Sydney comes up to that one scene in town after they've instated the curfew, and she's like, "It looks like how'd she put it? Basically, it looks like The Town That Dreaded Sundown,
Right.
which is definitely a
Oh yeah.
classic horror movie.
Then there's Apollo 13 with Houston We Have a Problem, which was just from the year before.
I don't know if that's
Yes.
a horror movie. No, I mean,
It's not a horror movie,
Well, there's
but
a
it
lot of
was
non-horror
a
references
line
as well.
that was referenced.
They also mentioned the Candyman.
Right.
yeah.
And then, of course, there's the scene in the. There are several references in the video store. Obviously, you know they.
Right.
Of course, with Randy going, they should just watch Prom Night and they'll know everything. You know that sort of thing.
Prom Night Revisited.
They don't know much if they'd know so much if they just always watched Prom Night. That's always the answer. Is Prom Night.
Right.
Prom Night sucks. In case you were wondering, like it's really only
kinda-
worth watching once.
Kind of largely does. Like it's pretty. Well, I don't know. There are definitely worse slashers than Prom Night.
But there's definitely better ones. All
But,
right.
yeah, it's. I think average is maybe the word I would use.
I would agree. It's right there with like Alice, Sweet Alice, or some shit. Like,
Okay. So
Hey, I just got the Arrow. I just got the brand new like Arrow version of that, and I've never seen it
battery in
before.
it?
So don't spoil it in any way, even by saying if it sucks or
just
not.
go for it. Just go for it. That's all you gotta know, dude.
So, as a follow-up to the writing and editing, we should probably comment, I guess, a little bit on the effects.
Yeah, I
Makeup
keep
stuff.
trying to say that, and you know,
I'm sorry, buddy.
road blocked. But anyway, I mean, we've kind of covered a good amount of the effects. I mean, the effects are mostly just like, you know, like basic wounds, you know, and blood and like viscera. Like
Well,
the effects of this are really good. Like they're very realistic to the point where, you know, it's even more believable because it's like, oh, if you get stabbed, you know, you don't have like a huge, you know, gaping wound. It's like a spot of blood on your clothes, you know.
but we
Except
did get two full disembowelments, actually, if you really think about it with Scream. They were just done so tastefully and so quickly that we don't really think of them as like disembowelments like we would in other movies, you know?
Yeah, that's what I like
Tasteful
the Banana Splits
disembowelment.
movie, which had one of the nastiest cutting in half disembowelments I've seen in like literally anything ever before.
Well, again, coming from someone that does not care for gore but can do fine with shocking and sudden violence, this movie is kind of the way if I'm going to watch a violent film, this is kind of edited the way that I would watch typically.
Right.
And I will admit, the effects are just realistic enough that if they were longer cuts, I probably wouldn't have liked the film nearly as much.
It would have made it gratuitous. I mean, that's my whole thing with Scream is that they do the shit in a way that's not gratuitous. It doesn't feel like a fucking slasher movie, you know, where it's trying to be gratuitously violent, right? Like it feels like a horror movie that's trying to appeal to a wide scope of people, you know.
Right.
And it happens to have some of that stuff in it that would appeal to us that is more gratuitously violent. I don't know. Scream definitely could have turned out to be one of those movies that would have been, you know, gratuitously violent and written off as being such, you know what I mean? But if they had not done that and taken the time to, you know, I guess be like violent at the same time as also appealing to the rest of the population that just wanted a good scary movie, Scream probably wouldn't be what it is, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like they did exactly what they needed to do to make it the movie that we all remember, you know.
Yeah, like it was very, you know, like you said, you know, tasteful, restrained, like, you know, like I said, you know, nothing too crazy. Like I fully buy all the effects in this movie, except for that damn garage door thing.
And yet,
As much as I love it, I will defend it till the day I die. I'm sorry.
And yet, when this film came out, it was very controversial for the level of violence and gore, and it was considered terribly gratuitous. And it was just, it kind of did pave the way for the much worse films that came later on.
For sure.
But it definitely is interesting to hear y'all talk about being tasteful and restrained, and it is a little bit by the standards that we are used to now.
Yeah.
But by the standards of the time, it was like, holy crap.
Well, even at the time, dude, if they had went a little crazier with that, it would have fallen into the category of like splatter flicks, you know.
Well, kind of like we were talking briefly earlier. Just a couple years later, we were talking earlier about American Pie. At the time, that was almost controversial for how and now it's like kind of tame compared to those kind of comedies. It's kind of funny how those things, funny and sad in a way.
It's interesting to think about what Scream would have been if it came out a few years later, you know.
Now, I want to mention, I know earlier, Mosley, you said something kind of negative about the soundtrack. I was just kind of curious what that was.
Well, okay, here's my deal. For this, as far as the soundtrack goes, like the audio, the cues for it are a little too on the nose, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the soundtrack is great in and of itself, but I think in terms of when the soundtrack, okay, the score is good when it's the score for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The score for the people in the movie is a little bit too much obvious, you know.
What?
I mean,
like there's all these cues in the score where it's like shing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think the
does
score. I think the score is pretty good.
Yeah.
Because it's more about setting like an atmosphere, and I mean, yeah, it does have stings to kind of punctuate
It
moments,
is,
but
right?
it all works like really well. Like it doesn't distract me or like bother me.
They intentionally tried to go for a somewhat of a non-horror vibe. Like a lot of the horror films, the scores kind of sound similar.
Check it, boys. Like the best point for me where the score or the soundtrack works is in that scene where what's his name, Billy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He comes into the bedroom of Sydney, and they play that cover of
Don't Fear the Reaper.
Don't Fear the Reaper, exactly.
I also always enjoy
that whole section to me is like the best point in the movie where the score or the soundtrack or whatever you want to call it works the best with the scene and everything that's going on in the movie.
I also always enjoy a good use of Schools Out, and they had a pretty good use of it here.
They do.
And generally the songs were well used, but yeah.
I mean, Red Right Hand. I mean, that was just iconic for that.
Like you just sit there and you watch that scene where he's creeping into her bedroom with the Don't Fear the Reaper cover. Like that is, to me, is like so haunting, you know. And if you really watch it and you pay attention to it and you listen to that song, I think it fucking makes that scene a lot deeper. I don't know. For me, I could have some personal bias against that too, because again, like I said at the beginning, that scene reminds me a lot of like my initial like high school girlfriend, you know. So
I guess maybe if I watched it over and over and over time, maybe
that slow "Don't Fear the Reaper" behind it, it's like it's hard not to get kind of swept into that. Like, man, I remember my high school girlfriend shit right here when I'm watching this. Yeah,
I think the music overall reminded me a little bit of high school, just because a lot of that was what was popular at the time. So it's kind of a nice.
Well, it was like a '90s. It's like a '90s teen rock like soundtrack. Like a lot of those songs were like things that you would hear seemingly everywhere you went. Like some other horror movies use the same like pop music. One thing I noticed about like the main kind of Scream theme here is the kind of, it's hard to describe, but I bet you'd recognize it if you heard it like right away. The menu music for I think Jigsaw and some of the other like Lionsgate owned horror movies uses the Scream theme like on their menus.
Well, I think like me and Jake and David are like old enough to remember being like high school kids in that fucking so.
Yeah, I can remember
Brandon lucked
being.
out at that one.
Well, some of you aren't that much older than me.
Well, I mean, for me, it was I was a terrible music person back in the early '90s. I mean, the only bands I listened to in the very early '90s were Queen and Weird Al, which is a very weird
Ouch.
combination, oddly.
Well, Weird Al, I guess.
I'm
is
sure
cool.
you remember shit though, like the Wallflowers.
Oh yeah,
I mean, we were there, bro.
I mean, like the Bad Seeds.
Closing time, every new beginning.
Hey, that was the theme for my graduating class. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, like the Bad Seeds with the Red Right Hand. That for me will forever be the theme
Well,
for
don't they play
Scream.
it in all of the Scream
I
films?
love this.
They do the first three. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's the Red Right Hand that quickly turned me into almost a Tom Waits fan directly after that.
All right. So, should we do favorite scenes? We're up to midnight.
Oh, might as well end this on the right note.
I'm down this however you guys want. I'm sorry that if I've contributed to it being convoluted here, but I think we've all had fun.
I think we all did.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's a pretty great movie.
Scream is.
So, I mean, I don't know why the first time I saw it, like I wasn't all that impressed by it.
Mhm.
But I don't know, maybe my tastes just weren't
You weren't ready for
particularly
it.
developed yet.
I wasn't all that impressed with it my first time either, because I kept hearing it through other people at school and whatnot, and I was like, cut it out already. I mean, I've heard about it like 20,000 times already. Let me see it in my own fashion. All right,
Yeah.
you know.
I mentioned this a little bit early in the episode, but it is honestly kind of surprisingly difficult to get like decent stuff for the costume, because the way you can buy it like in a kit, that kit does not come with gloves. And I had the hardest time like finding decent looking gloves to go with my costume, which I sent the rest of our crew here some pictures of me in the costume, so maybe that'll end up being our thumbnail or something.
Dude, I was obviously fucking around when I said what I said. You looked dope, and like you did it justice for sure.
It was kind of tough to take photos with the gloves, but anyway, apparently, so then usually in some of these movies, like the killer weapons are like these like custom made like special things, and in this case, the knife. Ghostface's knife is a buck 120, and it was a mass-produced, super common knife that you could just buy almost anywhere up until I think 10 years ago or so, when they kind of downgraded the ones that would be in stores to like the buck 119, because the 120 was like slightly too large for most hunters. So if you're looking to get like a really nice if you're looking for authenticity, you can get the knife, and I almost bought one myself.
120 though. You mentioned that like the hunters it was a little too big for them. Like that's the one I want.
Well, it's meant for like a boning knife, like in the field, and I think it had like a 12-inch blade or something crazy.
Like I want it to be right there with the Ghostface costume. So if it looks all big and intimidating, like. Because that knife in that movie is kind of fantastic, actually, if you look at it.
Well, it does the job, definitely.
It does the job.
It certainly looks scary.
It's fucking top notch.
Yeah, it's like $90 on Amazon. You can go get one right now.
Actually, I'll start us off with favorite scene, so we can move to that real quick. To me, just that entire first setting, with the popcorn, with the just that first killing scene with Drew Barrymore, to me that is the ultimate scene. To me, I can't think of any other scene that would be
goddamn.
I mean, that's such a hard one to top too, because like it kind of takes a while for us to have a scene with that same kind of like intense energy in it. And you know, even if people don't like the movie, they remember that scene. So I'm kind of betting that's going to end up being a lot of people's favorites. It's actually what I had for my favorite too.
It's mine.
But I think I'll kind of pivot. So I think my favorite just line or moment in general is so I'm trying to remember exactly where in the plot this fits in. I think it's during one of the scenes where they're at school. It's like Sydney just shouts, "What are you waiting for?" And if only, again, going back to Scary Movie, like I think I like that line just because of the joke that they do with it in Scary Movie. Like they have that guy like, "I'm about to jump," and she's just shouting, "What are you waiting for?" on the other side of the building, not knowing about it. And the guy's like, "What am I waiting for?" And then he jumps. And like, so apparently the story behind that is, I guess, some child or something like that like won a contest. It's like direct a movie set for a day or like write some dialogue or something to that, something low level to that effect, but somebody won the opportunity to do something like that, and that was the thing that they added to the movie. It's like I think they were like 11 or something, and it's like, just say this, and it's like, this is pretty awesome. Like I think Nev Campbell was even like, that's one of my favorite lines. Which kind of a lame thing to like.
Not at all, dude. I think it's fucking super rad.
There are a lot of really killer like scenes in this.
Right.
I think,
in a manner of speaking,
I think my favorite scene will, I think, always be the party scene where he mentions the 3 rules, and Matt Lillard is like, "I'll be back."
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Put some flourish on it. Damn.
It's a caricature role for sure.
Yeah. I think I do agree that opening sequence, like if that had been a standalone short film, that would have been a hell of a short film. But like I said, I think that one moment, that one oh crap moment where she realizes the dude on the other end is probably not got her best interests in mind. That in particular, that moment, but there were several moments that were great in that scene, but particularly that moment. And again, some of the random lines of dialogue later on, some of Lillard's ad-libs at the end, and some of Randy's lines, I always thought some of those were really fun. So it is kind of hard to pick a definite favorite, but I think probably that one moment right at the beginning. The comparable one for me, and I know Brandon will know what I'm talking about. You ever see this series, Puella Magi Modoka Magica? And part in the 3rd episode, you see that moment, you're like, holy crap, this is not what I thought I signed up for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of those moments.
You guys gotta hit me with that on your fucking anime recommendations, man.
It's a harder one for physical media. It's like super expensive. That's a streaming one, unless you get lucky.
I'll go for it though.
My thoughts on anime are well documented.
And yet the last 3 animations you actually liked.
Yes.
It should be well documented with, Septinson versus the world, but
I mean, that would just be like, what? And it's like, what about this
anime
like, series? It sucks. And it would be like that for many hours.
Guys don't have that fucking.
You don't know me, do you?
They'll talk.
Not yet.
We'll talk to you about it for ages.
Anyway, did we get everybody's favorite?
Who get anybody left out?
Should you say one else?
Did we get you your favorite, Jake?
Yeah.
No, we got, yeah.
Did we get yours, Mo?
Again, I don't really have one, bro.
Okay.
Like, it's not something we're gonna be able to condense down into.
Just like the ambience of the thing, I'm guessing, or like the whole feel of the movie.
I mean, if I have to pick, if I'm forced to pick a favorite slasher movie, it's going to be The Burning every time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. We're talking about a favorite like part
Scene.
of Scream itself.
Oh, favorite part of Scream? Definitely that bedroom scene, dude. Because it's just all so perfectly put together. You know, it's like equally creepy because he's coming in there trying to get his piece. Yeah. And then there's that super slow cover of "Don't Fear the Reaper" by Gus. Apparently, is the like name of the dude that did it.
But we can keep it PG-13.
What's that?
No, just everything about it, man. You listen to that, you just watch that that fucking scene, you know, and you put that stupid "Don't Fear the Reaper" cover against it. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, did you guys actually listen to that song that was playing in the background?
I mean,
I
yeah,
actually
we
didn't
we
notice
did,
it.
We did.
I
We
have
did
to go
notice
back to it
like,
now.
it just took me a while to. I
You know
noticed
what?
it on this play, but not on previous
One
plays.
thing
But
I'm curious about, I don't
When
think
you actually listen to it, it's quite soothing.
I don't
What was-
think I heard the phrase "Don't fear the Reaper." I was listening. I heard the other lyrics. I very clearly heard the Romeo and Juliet reference. But
I don't know if
Yeah,
they got to
Romeo
that.
and Juliet.
I don't know if they got to that line in the song because it played pretty briefly.
Well, people know that I am a big proponent of. I think there needs to be an Oscar for use of music in film.
For
And
sure.
I say this is a good example of why, because you can definitely, the soundtrack supervisor does an incredible service. And next month, and of course, I guess, Brandon, you'll be doing the announcement of next month's when we wrap up.
No, that'll be
that'll
be
be-
at the last week of the month.
last week of the month. Okay. It's looking like there will be a couple of films next month where I'm going to definitely be going on that. Talking about that. So,
We got some big ones
Um,
next month.
yep.
Well, anyway, gang, I think we should probably wrap up. So
That aside, I think
yeah.
more people should definitely take a moment to look into that scene in the film where they play that "Don't Fear the Reaper" cover.
Right.
I know I'll be going back to check that out. Definitely.
So will I.
yeah, but anyway, so the Scream sequels turn out to be pretty good. I think that's probably the take-home message for if we want to talking about the sequels, because we've kind of peppered a lot of information about them throughout.
One thing on that, though, it is notable. Wes Craven directed all four, and I believe this is the only horror franchise where the same director directed every film. So that's pretty cool.
What about Phantasm?
Oh, I don't know. Was that the same director each time?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
so maybe there were two.
Damn.
Slasher
I'm doing my best.
Slasher film. There we go.
So anyway, on that note, I guess this is the part where we all go into, who the hell are we and why should you care?
I don't know.
So I'm going to start with me. I'm Dustin, also known as the Crypt of Horrors. I have a YouTube channel for my horror collection. I collect anything horror related that I can find here in Milwaukee, and I'm starting to work on doing more reviews. So you can find that stuff on my channel, The Crypt of Horrors, here on YouTube, which I suppose shouldn't be too surprising. So I have an Instagram for the collection as well, also The Crypt of Horrors. And I hang out pretty frequently on Twitter as, well, The Crypt of Horrors.
There you go.
Yeah, have we driven our point home yet? So, go follow me on all those things. And, the more of an audience I have, the more incentive I have to take time out of my absurdly busy grad school schedule and post stuff for you. So, looking forward to doing a review of Crawl, which I finally picked up today after months of anticipation.
That is a very, very odd one. You
Yeah,
should
it's
do
gonna be good.
Zardo. You should do Zardos down the way.
Oh my gosh.
Well, eventually I'll probably
Zardos!
do that.
I do
still have
images out
that.
of my head.
I do still have that screener for bad CGI sharks, which I'm also excited about. It's just kind of, I need to have time to like sit down and like write something because since they were nice enough to give me a screener, like I want to do like an extra good job. So yeah, just follow me for more madness. So and whoever's next, I am going to go use the bathroom. So go nuts, guys.
So definitely, if you want to check out some weekly, like, updates on what is coming out on media, you need to check out Septemson versus the World. That's kind of a thing you need to do. I don't know. These guys are going to plug themselves adequately, so they definitely need to be seen because Septemson versus the World is probably the best fucking thing that I've seen in a long time.
Well, you as well, Mo, have a channel that you run, don't you?
Definitely don't downplay that channel. It's a very good channel.
I do the odd movie reviews. If you guys want to come over there and check out that shit as well, that's good. But definitely Septemson versus the World and Rebel Gaming Club are some things that you need to see. Kotobuki Jake and Brandon, keep it real over there. I often add multiple things to my want list every week, so it's definitely something that needs to happen for you if you do that shit. If you're gonna watch my channel, I guess just be prepared for random inconsistencies and upload dates, but I will definitely do things from time to time. And check these guys out, man. Inside Movies Galore, Septemson versus the World. If you want to keep up to date with the shit that's coming out, really, Septemson versus the World is something you need to be doing. So
Brandon, I guess that's your cue.
Oh yeah, well, we do run a channel dedicated to physical media, and we probably owe our existence to channels like Rebel Gaming Club and Mosley's channel in general to inspiring us to move forward. We do, but of course, at the end of the day, it's all about physical media, and we are in the Halloween spirit this year with the Horrorween episodes where we talk about various interesting films. Of course, this week we will be covering the film Piñata, Survival Island, about a deadly piñata. Instead of filled with wonderful candies, it's filled with a evil that must be sated only with the souls of those that it kills.
I mean, what more do you need to know? Get the fuck out of there.
You know what you should do after that? I should send you a copy of Killer Piñata, and then you can come on my channel and talk about it.
No.
I don't know if Jake wants to be subjected to another Killer Piñata film.
I mean, did he see Killer Sofa? Because I feel like there's some crossover.
I have a copy of it.
This takes place on a remote island out in, they said, 15-mile swim from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so and Dustin, you were just talking about bad CGI sharks. I see a crossover with the bad CGI piñata,
Yeah.
But we do also help with Inside Movies Galore, and I have been running a lot of the movie selection and voting lately. And I am proud to say that we have gotten over 140 votes in our newest lineup for the films for November. So we are going to be very happy to talk about those as we go later in the month. But of course, next week we will be celebrating Katie Cadaver's birthday with her film selection Pieces, which I
got a shirt. You've seen me wear the shirt multiple times. Dude. I'm not talk about Pieces.
It's exactly what you think it is.
Thanks again for you guys having me around for this. I'm definitely not worthy, and
Oh, you
Well-
got this stuff down.
All right.
it's been a treat for sure.
Eventually, you'll get used to plugging your own shit at the end, and just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna plug my own shit. It'll always be Septum Sin or some shit.
Plug me. My channel sucks. I need it.
It'll get there. It'll get there.
Oh, it's an awesome pickup channel. When I get to see the views, I usually always catch it once it's up. When I get to see them.
Who, me?
Yeah, I'm an avid watcher of your channel. I like to support
thank you.
people that I think do good work. I've subscribed to a lot, but there are a few that I get to watch on a regular basis. Yours is one.
Oh, thank you. Like,
And I think it's more of one of those things too, where like I'd rather watch your shit, dude, than somebody else's, you know. Because I actually know you. I've met you right now. So
oh, cool. I
Throw it
appreciate
throw
it.
it up in the chat. I'll fucking sub your channel right now.
Yeah, chat. Sorry, I've had like 4 beers.
Hey, Jake.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I've had a lot.
That's okay. I'm two behind you.
Oh, I've got to get prepared because I got to work from 8 to midnight tomorrow. It's
I
midnight
should
over
have thought about that. I didn't.
That
I
sounds
feel
about like my
painfully
work
sober right now.
Right.
Hey, I have 32 subscribers. How'd
That's
this happen?
okay. Bloody Marys in the morning, right?
So, hey, we should go ahead and finish the outro.
Definitely. Jake, why don't you go unless you have.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, as y'all said, I'm frequently on Septum Sin versus the World, and yes, we do have that high quality film that we discussed this week, along with some of the fun pickups. And I think we went along with our pickup video this week, but there was some fun stuff to be had. So I think it was good. And I'm looking forward to Criterion has some good stuff coming out just in time for the November sale.
They've got a flash sale coming up, no, don't they?
Well, they have the November sale coming out, the half off, you know, which unless they're doing it differently this year, I don't think they are. But anyway,
is the Godzilla box set going to be out for that?
it comes out, I think, next week or the week after. I think it's the week after next.
A worthwhile buy.
Oh my god, that's going to sell out so fast.
And I found out, I think it's the same day that Matewan comes out, and I'm stoked because that was a good movie and it needs a re-release.
So why it's a frequent like, weekly thing for me. Like I love you, dude.
So,
you fucking every week you manage, especially with you guys and your weekly releases or your weekly pickups. I'm always looking forward to this.
right.
I should
And
probably
at least I'm consistent with that one. I have my own channel, Code of Wiki Jake, but I'm not consistent. I hardly ever upload. I have stuff from our Outer Banks trip that needs to be uploaded one day. One day it'll happen.
You took like 50 years worth of film on that trip.
You and Brendan are like my main source for finding cool anime and things like that. Yeah. So I'm always looking forward to that every week.
Alrighty.
What's going on? Like, I'm always fucking looking forward to the Septum Sin and Kodabiki Jack shit.
And
always going to be something good that I'm always going to add. Like, bare minimum, I add at least like 2 things to my want list every week that I watch their shit.
Oh man, as we clock in at a punishing 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Movie is worth it.
My name is David Streggy. I am the founding father of Inside Movies Galore. But you know what? I'm not the only host behind it. I host it with all of you. So thank you for joining me on this film journey of ours. And Mo, thank you for coming down from on high from Drunken Master Studios to come over to our neck of the woods for... for tonight's Scream episode. Brandon, what do we have in store for next week?
Oh, as I said, Katie Cadaver has a birthday, and that is her.
Okay, so that
Pieces.
starts the next month, or that's just the end of this month?
That is next week. Her selection is Pieces, which will be the 20-something, whatever 7 days.
29th. 29th. Oh, 22nd, so that's Pieces. And then what's on the 29th is Hocus Pocus, right?
Yes. We're going to end it on a bang with a true Halloween classic from the 90s, I believe.
This Pieces is the one from 1982?
Yep.
Is there another Pieces?
I don't know.
I definitely got the T-shirt for that, dude, because I get a lot of play on it on my other groups.
Yep.
Because it's like
Pieces.
It says some shit.
Well, in any case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and don't scream too loud for next week's episode.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, say good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.